This week on Historic Moments, we're going to talk about who on masks, National Guard versus violent protesters, and protest violence escalates. Welcome to Historic Moments with Randy Lindsay. I'm right here to report the news. I'm here to start a conversation about the events that are affecting your life. This episode is for the week ending June 7th, 2020. All right, and our first item is the World Health Organization says that healthy people shouldn't wear masks. This was reported by the New York Post. So, initially, the World Health Organization, WHO, had stated that we should be wearing masks. Now they're saying that unless that you are unless you're infected with the virus, or otherwise sick, or caring for someone who's sick, that there is no need for healthy people to wear the mask. All right, so it's interesting because the CDC is advising just exactly the opposite. All right, so we have the two biggest health organizations available to us on infectious disease, and they're giving us contrary advice. They can't even agree on what we should do. Now, to me, it seems simple that you should wear masks. I mean, that's an easy enough precautions to take. It doesn't make us go way out of our way, and it seems to be the most logical step to preventing spreading the virus. But is this a sign? I suppose we've had disagreements between organizations before. That's nothing new. That's been going on since the beginning of time. Where this is going to lead, though? And how does it affect your life? So do you decide that you listen to both sides and try to take an in-the-middle approach to this topic? Or do you pick a side that makes the most sense? Or maybe you just pick the side that you like. They tell you what you want to hear, and you do that, and then you just say, well, the CDC said to wear masks. Well, the WHO said not to wear masks. I don't know. What's your take on that? What's your opinion? Which way are you leaning towards? Do you think masks are necessary, or do you think they're just a bunch of hooey, that they're there and they're really not effective at stopping the virus? I mean, my own personal experiences, I have several members of my family in the medical field, and they all insist that using the masks are so important to keep the virus down. But I'm not trying to report, like I said, I'm not reporting news. I'm not telling you that's what you should do. I'm just trying to get you thinking about this whole thing and see where you come down on it. So when you hear that, does it make you want to run out to your journal, your pandemic journal, and say, dear journal, these people don't know what they're talking about. They can't even agree on whether we should wear masks. How can we ever make any progress with this virus if they can't even agree on something as simple as that? All right, and does it make you angry? What kind of steps are you going to take? How does it affect? How does this announcement, how does the conflicting announcements, the conflicting advice between the CDC and the WHO impact how you're going to make your decisions on this matter? All right. And what about the future? How does this kind of conflicting information make you want to act in the future? Do you have confidence in either of these organizations, or is there someone else that is giving medical advice about the pandemic that you feel is you can listen to and you can follow their advice? Or does it just make you distrust all the media that you are hearing? My last week I talked about deep fakes. Maybe this goes with the same thing. I mean, with deep fakes, they can create images that aren't real people, and then can attach whatever story they do, and it makes me wonder how much importance I can place to anything I can see on the network, on the internet. Now, what about this? You're getting conflicting news, same thing. Which news agencies, if any of them, can be relied on to give you factual information, as opposed to maybe their own political, news based on their political spin? All right. I mean, and then the real question is, what can we do about it? As a country, is there something that we can do about it? As cities, is there something that we can do it? As neighborhoods, is there something we can do about this? And as individuals, is there something we can do about this? And obviously, that's the kind of thing that if you're writing your journal, you could write about your frustration with the situation. You could discuss for future generations what advice you decided to take, and then what you plan to do. How does this impact you? Now, for me personally, I'm wearing masks when I go out. In fact, I'm wearing them more. I got a warning from my brother who is in the medical field, and he said, make sure you wear those masks. So now I do. I was a little less affected by it before because I rarely go out, and it's hot and it's sunny here, and we've had a very low incident of infections in the area where I'm at. But now I'm thinking that I'm rethinking my strategy, and I'm moving forward. I'm encouraging everyone I know to put on masks. So that's just me personally. That's how I reflected to it. And I mean, obviously, you can do what you want. All right. And if we can't look to the experts for reliable advice, do we start looking to our close communities for solutions for future emergencies? Should neighborhoods be learning how to band together for protection, for shared resources, for solutions? I mean, is that something that you're planning to do? I will say that in my neighborhood, we have created a neighborhood group for that exact purpose, that we can talk about ideas on how to move forward. I mean, this pandemic has really started a kind of a series of chain events, and we don't know where that's going to end. And it is more comforting for me, anyways, to have some sort of neighborhood plan on what we can do to help one another and move forward and fight against any sort of, not literally fight. I'm not talking about like armed resurrection. I'm just talking about we have this advice on the masks, and how do we come up with a better solution, an informed solution, an effective solution. All right. And if you've got ideas on what you're going to do about the pandemic and the masks and that situation, I would love to hear them in the comments. Please feel free to leave those in the comments. All right. Our second item, not the national card. I'm not sure what the national card would be. That would be a good topic to talk to later on. But the National Guard was called out to police protests. They were getting the protesters, from what I understand, were getting a little bit rowdy, and the National Guard was called to reinforce the police. This was reported by ABC News. All right, so in this situation, the police and National Guard moved protesters so that President Trump could do a photo op. All right. Is that right? What do you think about that? Is it is the potential for a riot or ill will or getting the crowd even rowdier than they were before worth that making them move for a photo op? Or should they have been more restrained and made allowances for the president to be able to get in there and make that photo op? I don't know. That's up to you. Like I said, I'm not trying to take sides on any of the items that I am talking about. I'm just trying to bring them up and let you think about what it means. All right. For this situation turned violent. All right. And, as soon as the protesters are violently clashing with the police, we know it's not going to end well. It can't end well. Violence begets more violence, and it tends to escalate. So we have protesters, we bring out the police, the protesters get rowdy, we bring in the National Guard to, the government, the government brings the National Guard to support and reinforce the police. The protesters could decide to back down because it's turned serious, or they can ratchet up the escalation even more. And then what's the police and what are the military and what are the National Guard? What are they going to do once the protesters ratchet up their level even more tense, even more willing to commit violence? All right, so the president, and here we see that because of this, the president's threatening to enact the Insurrection Act to stop the rioting and the looting. I mean, so much rioting and looting everywhere. It's not that the people are just going out and Black Lives Matter, where We need reform in the police departments to make sure that innocent minorities are not being shot and killed by police officers who are not acting according to the rules. All right, and so then, yeah, rioting, that's not helping. The looting, that's not helping. These things do not help get that message across. And then the government is forced to bring out troops and police and take a serious stand. Well, okay, so the Insurrection Act could be ratchet everything up to an even higher level. I mean, so this is the reaction to the protests and riots. So what's going to be the reaction to the Insurrection Act? I mean, if it does get passed through and they move forward with this, how's that going to affect what the protesters are doing? And maybe we're not really talking about protesters. Maybe we're talking about two separate groups. Maybe we're talking about protesters and opportunists, people who are taking advantage of these protests to be able to push forward an agenda, or maybe just to riot and loot because that's what they want to do. I don't know. What do you think? What's your opinion on that? And what is your feeling about that? How are you reacting to it? Are you supportive of the protesters? Are you supportive of the rioters and the looters? Or are you on the other side and you think that law and order needs to be maintained, that there can be peaceful protests and that's the way it should be? Or is this a time of change? Does this mark a point where we move forward into increasingly more violent reactions from both sides until we are left with a revolution or a civil war? Where do you think that this is going? And then more importantly, what do you plan to do because of this situation? Are you in an area that is affected by the protests and the riots? Maybe they're marching closer and closer to your neighborhood. What do you do in that situation? Do you just lock up and you hope they leave you alone? Or do you rally a neighborhood, all the neighbors, and you just stand in solidarity on your street saying, no, you just can't come down my street? What are you going to do if things continue to escalate and it does come to your neighborhood? I mean, that's definitely something you want to think about. These things have a way of getting out of hand, and everything that I'm seeing seems to indicate that things are not going to get a lot better until they get a lot worse. All right, so third item, I'm always talking about where you have an effect, and then you have something that is results because of that. So the third item, as reported by The Hill, the violence has indeed escalated. The protesters have ratcheted up the violence and have shot police. So, I mean, that takes it more serious. Police can show more restraint up until that point where police officers are being shot and killed. Then it makes it really difficult. It makes it very difficult for them not to use violent force in order to at least defend themselves, maybe to enforce law and order. Okay, so where is this going to stop? And is this escalation going to continue? So next week, are we going to see it ratchet up? In 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, what's going to happen? Are the riots going to continue, or are they going to start subsiding? All right, so a lot of the same things I was asking in the last segment apply here. So, but for me, I kind of wonder, is this a scene from a dystopian novel? Or is this a historic nod to social upheaval? Because we've seen this before. Generally not good, a lot of lives lost, but social upheaval nonetheless. Either way, which side of the issue are you supporting? And if you don't support any side in the matter, why not? What will need to happen before you take a stand and do something? What is the world going to look like in 2 years if this continues? Take a moment and write down in your journal, your historic moments journal, your thoughts about this. I think it's going to become important down the road for you to be able to take a look back at these events and remember what you felt and what you were thinking. Hopefully in 2 years we're all laughing about it. Well, maybe not laughing about it. We're all happy because things resolved nice and peacefully. Everything went back to the way it was, and we can just mark this as kind of a brief, crazy spell by the American public, and that finally got peacefully resolved, and we move forward and continued in prosperity? Or is it not going to be that way? Is it going to get continually worse? So, yeah, keep a journal with your ideas, your fears, and the lessons that you're learning during this time. Future generations will be able to benefit from your observations of what's going on right now, because there is no doubt this is a historic moment. These are historic moments. We are in very historic times. It is an age of one momentous event after another, and you kind of have a responsibility to yourself and future generations to record your part of it. All right, so that's it for this week. I hope I made you think.